Donna was hysterical and called me the day that Dan was killed. That is the testimony of Annie Cunningham, a friend of Harvey and Donna Adelson's, who took the stand today. But prosecutors on cross-examination had the digital forensics expert admit that no such calls ever took place. Does that mean that birds of a feather flocked together? Because apparently Annie Cunningham telling some falsehoods while sworn in to tell the truth, apparently it was not the truth at all.
Welcome to the global phenomenon, Surviving the Survivor. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning journalist, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation? Welcome to Surviving the Survivor. This is the show that brings you the very best guests in all of true crime, coming to you live from the Leon County Courthouse in Tallahassee, Florida, where we have been for the last 2 weeks, now into the third week between jury selection and testimony in the trial of Donna Sue Adelson versus the state of Florida. And today, the defense began its case in chief, and I got to say, it was a bit underwhelming. The day started off actually with something that's sort of SOP, standard operating procedure, and that is the defense essentially filing a motion saying they are making an argument that there is not enough evidence or insufficient evidence in the case thus far to convict Donna Adelson, therefore asking for a mistrial. The judge heard some arguments about this, Judge Stephen Everett, starting off the morning, and he summarily decided that is not the case, that there is plenty of evidence and the trial will move forward. But of course, they're doing that to try to preserve the record. And then following that, we had one of Donna Adelson's friend, a woman named Ann Cunningham, take the stand, followed by her partner, a guy named Ron Gutterson, and essentially both of them testifying to the mood of Donna Adelson, pre-conviction, post-conviction with Charlie Adelson. But what really stood out to most people, and I noticed in the chat as well, is that Ann Cunningham essentially said that she spoke with Donna Adelson the day of the conviction and that she was an absolute mess and devastated and destroyed. But then when the digital forensics expert who was up there for the defense was crossed by Sarah Catherine Dugan of the state, apparently no such phone call took place. At that point, we were looking around trying to find Annie Cunningham, but she and her partner Ron Gutterson had apparently, and that is a photo of her. I never watched the Golden Girls, but apparently she looks a lot like one of them. So that was some of the talk of the town. Kind of a thick Queens accent, although they live in New Jersey and spend part of their time down here in South Florida. And the story came up from partner Ron Gutterson that it was Christmas Eve, bunch of years back, more than a decade ago, where these two, her and her partner Ron, are down. There he is, are down visiting South Florida. It's Christmas Eve. There is nowhere to go. And so they go to a Chinese restaurant for Christmas Eve, which is quite stereotypical, I guess. And what does he do? He says he bites into a spare rib, cracks his tooth, and somehow makes his way to Harvey Adelson, who, of course, has the Adelson Institute. And that is how they renew a friendship dating back to high school. And because of that, tooth is fixed. They renew and rekindle their friendship. They end up going on trips together, traveling together. And so far, these are the only two friends either brave enough or, I don't know, maybe not intelligent enough to get up there and testify. But again, on cross, Georgia and Sarah doing what they do best, which was cutting into some of their testimony, even proving that some of it perhaps was not true. Now, the digital forensics expert, she was, she was fairly strong, just in the sense of her credentials. Young, I think she said she graduated college in 2014, and then was working in this case. When asked by Sarah Catherine Dugan, it was about a $300 an hour fee, including airfare. Just that portion of it was about $10,000. Of course, Sarah Catherine Dugan making that point to show jurors that the defense is paying for this testimony. Everyone has an opinion. And the digital forensic expert basically on cross also had to admit that the most voluminous amount of calls that were going on were between Donna and Charlie. So there was no wiggling out of that. The bottom line here is um, the defense really had a fairly hollow defense so far. Two friends of the Adelsons, followed by this digital forensics expert, and of course, the attempt at a mistrial, all fairly weak. I did watch the jury very closely this morning, back from the long weekend. A few of the gentlemen, had haircuts over the weekend. They looked refreshed. During the defense testimony and the defense direct, the jurors look less interested. When Georgia was on cross and Sarah was on cross, the jurors look much more interested. I was talking to a couple people in the hallway right after this, and to some degree, I mean, the jurors are not checked out in any way. They just appear to be, and this is just visually speaking, they appear to be a bit checked out when the defense is doing the line of questioning as opposed to the state. So I don't know. It's my opinion, and it's definitely an opinion, and I could be 1,000% wrong. Feel like the jury has already made their decision. They do not appear to be interested in Donna Adelson or what the defense has to bring at this point. They have apparently, um, I don't know, collected enough evidence in their minds that, or that's how it appears, that they have come to some sort of conclusion already. With that said, they're listening, they're watching. At times during the defense, one juror in particular in the front row who's been really attentive was kind of like rubbing his eyes, doing this sort of thing after a long weekend. There is the one woman in the back row. She's a really voracious note taker, back left row. If you're facing, I'm sorry, if you're facing the jury box, back right row, closest to the gallery. She was taking a lot of notes while the digital forensics expert was explaining things. So she is obviously still very vested in this. I think all the jurors are vested in this. Some people in the gallery who came out and said hello to me were asking me, "Hey, is that Mountain Man? I thought so. Hey, is this so and so? I thought so." I talked to Harold Anything But Dull, who spent 20 plus years as a paralegal. He's back in the gallery. He was really underwhelmed by what was the defense's defense so far. Now, we are expecting Donna Adelson to be called. We just don't know if that's happening today. It appears that they're holding the digital forensic expert to come back as well. It's not clear when. When I talked to Tim yesterday, Tim said, as far as he knew, neither Donna nor Charlie would testify today. I just don't know who else this defense is bringing at this point. So I'm curious myself, and we'll see how the afternoon plays out. And this is true from Janet Stutter. Prosecution witnesses are paid employees. That is true. Joel, slip a note to prosecutors. WhatsApp did not offer phone calls until 2015. I didn't know that. That's interesting. But I think on cross, they made that point that, again, this Annie Cunningham was saying that Donna called her all broken up and devastated, but no such call, as far as we know, was ever placed. So, and then with the digital forensics, it gets complicated and confusing because apparently there weren't, I guess, pings back and forth between Charlie and Donna, but Harold was explaining, Anything But Dull was explaining, yeah, they could have had their cell phones off. There could be other reasons for it. One of the things that, and I hope Harold doesn't mind this, but it's interesting, is just back to that 2014 planner with Dan's Honda Accord license plate number. That's a really incriminating piece of evidence, which apparently Dan Rashbaum did not need to turn over, or was not part of discovery. So I guess one of the future questions is there an IAC argument to be made, which is ineffective assistance of counsel, not with these lawyers, but maybe with Dan Rashbaum? That's something I need to dig in and ask about. But it's a point that Harold raised as a potential issue moving forward. So kudos to Harold for being on top of this. Dalai Lama, another great name. So the defense called Anne, who was on her way to the airport, to return to the courtroom. I'm not 100% sure what was going on with that. But it sounds like she might be recalled. There was a little confusion at the end of the day about that, and maybe that is the case. I'll tell you this: her and Ron, the other character witness, they're together, and they left shortly after his testimony. She went first, and then him, so they left shortly after that. But I want to take this moment to wish my beautiful bride a happy 13th wedding anniversary. What a way to spend it, listening to Donna Adelson's friends testify. It's been hard to believe, COE, 13 years flies by. Somehow we have 3 kids together, and my kiddos and the COE were up here. It was great to see them. If you really want to kind of catch up on your sleep and rest after 2 weeks of trial, have 3 young kids come up and stay in your room with you, because there are no other rooms, because the Knowles are playing Bama. But it was great to see my kids. COE,
Joel,
happy
so as
anniversary.
happy anniversary. This morning,
Thank
as
you.
we were
So
watching
warm.
the
Yeah.
testimony here in the chat, a lot of people were obviously very tuned in to hearing from Anne. What about the jurors? Were they more interested in Anne than in, the analysts?
Um, that's a tough call. These jurors are really smart, and I think that they were interested in the digital forensics analyst, because she was providing, hard data, hard facts, if you will, and some of it contradicted what some of the testimony was from Anne. So I think that interested them. But from a character witness perspective, they obviously were interested in Anne and in Ron, her partner. But the minute those two opened their mouths without sounding rude, it was pretty clear and pretty obvious to everyone in the courtroom that none of what they were saying, or much of what they were saying, wasn't really credible to the jurors. They were literally doing this. They were kind of just looking away, turning their line of sight away from both Anne and Ron. Ron just, I mean, talk about, remember when Rashbaum took the case, and you're like, why would you have a Miami lawyer, you know, facing a Tallahassee jury? Well, you couldn't have brought 2 witnesses in there with kind of less rapport with a Tallahassee jury. You got this guy Ron, who's and I'm from there, so I can say this, sort of an obnoxious New York, New Jersey guy, talking about how much wealth he made in the real estate business, how he's got an MBA, and how on Christmas Eve, uh, Jewish people have nowhere to go but the Chinese restaurant. I mean, they just had there was no synergy, no compatibility between these witnesses and these jurors, and so they really started to tune him out. I did get a text message from someone you all know, but I won't reveal who it is, who's big in the true crime world. And it happens to be from New Jersey. And he's like, can you believe this about this Chinese restaurant on Christmas Eve? We were both laughing about it. So, I think the jurors were kind of like, what is going on with these two? And of course, one of them apparently looks just like one of the Golden Girls. So people were fixated on that as well, which I'm sure if they're fixated on it, so are the jurors.
And what about Charlie and Donna? Obviously, everyone's waiting to see whether or not they're going to testify. What are the rumblings there in Tallahassee? What are people saying?
No one really knows. I mean, the gallery today, by the way, was as crowded as it was, if not more crowded, than when Wendy testified. So I think most people anticipated Donna being up there today. Again, I spoke about this with Tim. Tim and I were invited, and shout out to the people that invited Tim and I out last night. It was super generous. Insisted on taking us to one of the nicer restaurants in Tallahassee. So again, those are the type of people we're dealing with in Tallahassee. Super gracious, super kind, and shout out to Lisa, who had us over. She was in court today, COE, and they want to take us up on babysitting duties when they're in South Florida. So there you got that. But now I forgot the original question. But the jurors are definitely still interested in this. It's just my feeling is that that they've already made a decision, and now everything else is sort of extraneous, unless Donna gets on the stand and is able to wow the world and convince everyone, or there's some crazy piece of evidence that we haven't seen yet that, you know, maybe works their way toward an acquittal outside of some sort of absolute bombshell piece of information. I feel like these jurors are settled in a decision already, and that's going to happen once they go into deliberations. But as for Charlie, there's a lot more debate. With Donna, it is when will she testify? With Charlie, it's still is he going to testify? But the consensus is sort of that he likely will, and maybe just for the reason alone that it might be the last time he sees his mother, which is actually really sad. So people inside don't really know. It's not clear what's happening right after lunch, even. If Donna takes a stand, we'll be there. If not, we'll be there tomorrow. Others have said this could go through this entire week. I just have no idea how that's possible. My call is that this ends at some point tomorrow. I just can't see it going longer unless Donna's on the stand all day long and then Charlie comes in Thursday. But my bet is tomorrow or Thursday. I'll go with Thursday morning, and then we get closings and deliberations after that. Happy anniversary, COE.
Happy anniversary. And then another question for you.
You're gushing with about as much warmth as Charlie. Go ahead. I mean, not Charlie, Harvey, but go ahead.
I drove 10 hours last night, so I'm still recovering.
Yeah.
No, another thing I just wanted to clarify, because some people hopped on late at the end.
COE's like 13 years. It feels like 33 years. Go ahead.
It does feel like a lifetime. No, but what I was going to say is that so Anne was on the stand, then she left. They were headed to the Tallahassee airport, which is about 20 minutes. I mapped it out, 20 minutes from the courthouse. Now they're coming back. What else can we expect for the rest of the afternoon? Have they given you guys any kind of idea? I know you guys said you're all just sort of waiting to see what happens.
Yeah, I got to be honest. For full disclosure, I had an issue I had to deal with early, so I was like 20 minutes late. So I feel a little discombobulated. I personally have not heard anything beyond lunchtime, but I was speaking to other people who don't really seem to know either. So there's kind of a consensus out there, kind of a confusion about what is coming next. Again, thank you to Elena, but again, it's with Donna, it's not a matter of is she going to testify, it's a matter of when. And with Charlie, it's still is he going to testify? But people seem to think that he will. Now today, also one thing I just want to point out, because it's tough to tell, the Markells have a lot of supporters and friends from Danny's friends from Tallahassee who are in the courthouse today in the gallery, and I know that helps a lot. It helps Ruth, it helps Phil. Phil has some family in town and they're here. So it's just such a contrast between Harvey alone. And by the way, if these people are such good friends, why, after they provided their testimony, why didn't they stick around? Why were they in such a rush to get out of here? Maybe it's because she knew she lied on the stand. I have no idea. But long story short, the Markells have a ton of support in there. It seems like it's growing, and Harvey is the only one solo by himself. Again, I posted a photo yesterday. It's really interesting to me. It's a picture of Charlie's mugshot side by side. Well, actually, up and bottom of Charlie's mugshot, and then Harvey in the courtroom, and they're like basically identical twins. I put that on Twitter at podcast STS and on Instagram at Surviving the Survivor. So,
and Joel, I just want to pop this up as well, because this is pretty cool, and I love to see this.
Yeah. So that's yesterday on my drive to dinner, I saw this. It's on the northeast side of town. If you notice, the law firm, that's Webster and Baptiste, two of our best guests, Stephen Webster and Louis Baptiste, attorneys at law. Stephen Webster was Dan's post-divorce attorney, and they've got, kind of a digital scoreboard type thing, whatever you call it, a marquee, and on there it says "Justice for Dan." So I got a shot of that, and you know, that it just goes to show that it's not just bluster, it's not just Webster and Lewis talking the talk, but they walk it as well. And they've got this sign up for everyone in Tallahassee drives by this sign and it says "Justice for Dan." So that is the feeling here. Elizabeth Kim, Joel is a workaholic? Question mark. And drag COE along? Question mark. Happy anniversary. It does feel like a lifetime. I don't think I've worked that hard. As a matter of fact, I would whip myself if I had a whip, but I do not have a whip handy. Happy anniversary, you guys. Oh, thank you very much.
And
Sending love.
I did just want to share something, Joel. So I had never been to
Carm
Tallahassee.
doesn't think I work hard enough, right, Carm? I know you're watching. What's that, Bugs?
No, I was just going to share with everyone here. I had never been to Tallahassee before. I
Yeah.
had also never met Phil Markel.
Yeah, COE. What do you think of Tallahassee and Phil Markel? I forgot to ask.
Yeah, no, I actually was impressed with Tallahassee. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was lush. The kids and I, before we even got to Joel, I told the kids, I was like, we're going to take a quick detour. And so we went down Trescott because I wanted to get a lay of the land. I wanted to see everything that we had been talking about. And I know that, Joel, you've been there. So many people, including yourself, have taken videos, have shown everyone. But what I found fascinating is that, one, it's such a residential area. There's no reason to be on Trescott Drive unless you need to go there. There are so many other ways to cut through and so many faster ways. So I did find it interesting that Wendy cut through there. And second of all, as I was driving around and as I was absorbing what is Tallahassee, the scenery, the people, and I said this to Phil Markel, I realized Dan Markel and his kids really did have such a beautiful life there. Everything is so nice. Like the neighborhoods are really pretty. People are saying hello. Everyone is very welcoming. When I was driving, I was at a stop sign and the person to the right and I got there at the same time and they were like, "You go." And I was like, "No, you go." And it's funny because that would never happen in New York and LA, even here in Miami. And so my impression of Tallahassee is that it really is just such a nice, wholesome place. And the fact that, they hated this place so much, I just found it very interesting because I had my only impression of Tallahassee was everything that we have heard about and everything that we've seen through this case.
Yeah, and my kids even said, "Let's move to Tallahassee," mainly because they didn't want to make the drive all the way back. So they're up for it. I would live in Tallahassee. I mean, Tim baked chocolate chip cookies for my kids just to show you the kind of guy he is, and then we got invited to a house. We don't even know the people, and it was basically a family get together, and they invited our family, and everyone was just, I mean, beyond kind, playing with the kids. My kids got to play. There was a baby there, and that's just the kind. I mean, not to you know, I don't know, blow smoke, but it really is. It's just like it's a very quaint. It's not that it's not. You also COE. You thought like when I went.
It's much larger than I thought.
Yeah,
I told Joel,
yeah.
I thought we were going to bump into everyone that we knew that was there. I mean, it's a big place. I didn't see anyone aside from Phil Markel, and then the people, obviously that we went out with that night. But I didn't see anyone. It's much larger. There are a lot of people that really don't know about the case. There are people who recognized Joel and Tim, so they were coming up to both of them and talking about the case and showing their support for the Markels. But for the most part, people like when I went to Trader Joe's with the kids because we happened to go to the grocery store, and my kids mentioned that we were in town from Miami, and people were like, "Why?" And when we mentioned the case, they had no idea that there was even this big case going on.
Yeah, well, COE, if we move to Tallahassee, I can exhale and I don't have to worry about the 20 gazillion dollars it costs to live in Miami, and it's a much better lifestyle. So there's still hope, everybody. I can convince the COE to move to Tallahassee. I'll move in next door. I can't move in next door to Jansen, but I'll move in next door to Jared Ross.
I will say another thing. I actually, if I'm being honest, I went down Trescott 3 different times. It was raining when we first showed up. So I wanted to go back when it wasn't raining. And then another time I wanted to go back and cut through and compare it to another route that I did. And again, I do just want to say, like, there are many speed bumps there. It's very residential. The only cars that I saw that were driving in eventually turned into one of their driveways. So again, if you're familiar with this case and you know that Wendy Adelson turned down Trescott the day that Dan Markel was murdered, that he was shot and killed, I mean, it really is a very bizarre fact that I had obviously thought of before, but driving down, you really get a sense of how out of the way it is. And the ABC liquor that you always mention, Joel, is
Yeah.
right there on the corner.
Yeah, it's right there. So, yeah, I mean, it definitely helps, like, to physically drive through and see where everything is located. But it's also sad because there's kind of reminders everywhere about who he was. By the way, something that we're gonna officially announced, but that we are working on behind the scenes is Steve Cohen lost his mother. And so in Jewish tradition, you say a special prayer. So Steve's been going to the synagogue that Dan Markel went to while he's here. And the rabbi there really loved Dan. And so we're going to work. The rabbi and some people that are law professors who knew Dan want to do a fundraiser of sorts in Dan's memory, and do something at this synagogue where Dan was very active before Wendy yanked the kids out and basically forced them to leave. So the rabbi is really touched by all this. I saw him when I went to pick Steve. I also chauffeur Steve around. That's part of my day job. So on a trip to get Steve from that synagogue, which is on the campus of FSU, I had a chance to say hello to him, and he was telling me how much Dan meant to him. And he was with Dan as he passed away. Unlike the Adelsons, he was actually there in the hospital. So he has, both fond and very upsetting memories about Dan. But he really wants to do something where there's a fundraiser in his memory, where they can put something in the synagogue or help students with meals or something along those lines in Dan's memory. So we're aiming to do that and have them on as guests after the verdict. So maybe sometime next week, and we'll keep you posted on all that.
All right, Joel, you've got 16 minutes before we go back. So
Thanks,
why
which
don't you go?
leaves me absolutely no time for anything but what I eat for lunch every day, which is a Coke, poison, and a Snickers bar. Worst poison. I have
Well,
not been
this is
through.
that's your dream lunch. You choose. You want that.
By the way, I forget her name, but I really thank her. She said, I have a gift for you. There must be a serious problem with me. She took out 3 king size Hershey almond bars and said she was holding them for me till after court. But this is lunch today. Right there. That's it. That's lunch. So much sugar. Ugh. Disgusted by myself. All right, everybody. Love you. Love you, Tallahassee. It says it right there. Justice for Dan. It says it in Tallahassee. Justice for Dan Markel. Happy anniversary to my beautiful bride who's gushing with warmth like Harvey Adelson on our 13th wedding anniversary. When I get back, she and I are going to do like a night or two. We're going to do a staycation somewhere. Thanks to Joel, Steve, COE, Professor. Thank you. Thank you to Accounting Trends. COE, we're still working on those taxes. It has to get done. Love you, everybody. I'll let you take us out.